And here we are doing the wings. Now I've sped this one up, this part 3 up, so that you didn't have to take a long time to watch it. The whole total piece took me almost 3 hours, about 2.5 hours to complete. And so I didn't want you to have to watch the whole 3.5 hours of it. So I sped this one up. And I'm just going along that farthest wing from us, and I have darkened in the edges and drew in some lines. Now, of course, I am going to blend that out. I'm just putting down my foundation. Now, there's a blue marking here, and I've started off with sort of my cobalt greenish blue and then a little bit of the paler blue. And just blending that together with the tip of my finger and getting a really, really light blue and putting in the highlights right on top of it. And that's what I like about this kind of pastels. You go from dark to light, and the light will show up against all of those dark colors. So I'm just blending a little bit with my fingertips. And now I'm adding a portrait pink rose, or portrait rose, portrait pink, and a little bit of cream in there in those wings. And I'm just going to come and put it in this wing closest to us as well. I just want to try to keep it unified and just keep everything looking, you know, like it goes together. You don't want one wing looking all bright pink and the other one looking gray or something. So you try to integrate those colors into both wings so that they look like they match each other. They don't have to matchy-match, but they have to look like they're from the same bird at least. Now I've got my black, and I'm just putting in the markings down the back of that far-off wing. And I am taking my gray and my black pencil and just adding some shadows and some lines so that it looks like there are some separation between the feathers there. And I'm just adding some highlights with the really light blue, and some low lights with the darker blue, more highlights, and that's what I do. I go back and forth and adjust until it looks right to my eye. And I'm coming in there at the end with the colored pencil and just sort of cleaning up the lines and putting a little bit of extra color and blending in there. So now it's starting to actually look like wings or feathers, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm just blending it with a little blending stump. It's just a piece of paper all wrapped up tight. And you can blend with the tip of it into smaller areas that my finger will not get to. Now I'm adding a little bit more white down the back and the front of that little section where it's got that bright little speck of blue there. And now I'm just adding sort of a brownish gray shadow area. Coming back in with my darker color, my graphite gray or burnt umber. You can use either one for this, and I'm just sort of separating the feathers out, giving them just a tad bit of separation, coming in with the next layer of feathers, and just sort of patting it with my ring finger. Your ring finger is your weakest finger, so it's the best to blend pastels with because it's not too heavy, it's not too strong. So I always try to use my ring finger and my pinky finger to do the delicate blending. Now I've got my kneaded eraser, and I am just cleaning up the edges. A kneaded eraser is your friend in pastels. It can do so many things for you, and it can pick up those mistakes that you make. So now I'm just adding a little bit more shadow work into this light area under his wings next to his body, just giving a little bit more definition with some really pale brownish yellow color. And a little chocolate in there. I'm lining some of those with chocolate color. And I really like to do my pencil work at the end. The pencils they're not really real soft. They're hard enough to where they will go over the soft without disturbing it too much, but not so soft that they just make a blurry mess. They're hard enough to make some definition go on. So that's why I like my pencils at the end, to get those details in there. So I kind of work from soft, the really soft big pastels, and at the end I use my pastel pencils to do a lot of the detail work. Now you can use your soft pastels, use the edge to get small lines and fine lines, you know, the very edges and stuff. I just find it's easier for me at my age with all the arthritis I have in my hands to use the pencils. So it's up to you. You do what you want to do. It's your painting. Or some people call pastels drawing. I call them paintings. But whatever you want to call it is still yours, and you do what you want to do. Make yourself happy with the process. Now I'm adding a little bit more highlights in some areas with a white pastel. And that is a soft pastel, but it is so tiny. I have used it so much that I've got it worn down to where it's just a teeny tiny piece. But doggone it, I love that white because it really shows up when I put it down on anything, really, on any color. It shows up so much better than my titanium white. And I can't tell you what white it is because I threw the wrapper away and I didn't make a chart of it. I put it on a chart. But I'm going to use that white until there's no white left. And now you can see that the feathers are really starting to become defined from putting in those shadows. Remember, light and shadow is what informs you of the shape of something, the form of something. So light, shadow, tone, all really important when you're doing realistic artwork or trying to do something in a realistic manner. Now I am coming back and darkening up those tips of the feathers and adding a little bit more pastel, a little bit more shadow. And from the farthest one, and my little art critic over there, Dorian Gray, is hooting. I think he's liking this bird. He thinks we're doing a good job. He's cheering us on. Putting a little bit more of that cream and the pink in there. And I'm just building up layers. This is how I work. Some people work differently. I build up layers as I go and just soften it with my finger or whatever I have to blend it with. Usually I use my finger, but in really small areas, you can actually use the pencils, the pastel pencils to blend, or those little paper stumps. Blending stumps, that's what I call them, but I think they're called something else. But you know what I'm talking about. So you're smart, you'll figure it out. And I am flying here, buddy. I am getting these feathers done. I am not messing around. I'm getting those dark tips in, blending it in. Yes, I really like how this is coming out. I think it looks pretty good. Usually your painting is only as good as your reference. And this reference wasn't that great. It was very blurry, but I'm still pleased with the results I'm getting with it. Once we get these feathers like I want them, then we're going to start on the background a little bit. Now I'm adding some lighter colors to those feathers and just sort of blending it with the pencils. And adding that same color up into the other feathers. Like I said, you want to sort of keep it, unified. Adding colors all over so that they look like they're coming from the same bird. Now I'm adding a little bit of the really pale blue for some highlights. I see some blue in my reference photo, so I want to get that in there. Now I'm adding sort of a reddish brown to some of the shadows and just blending it in with the tip of my finger. And it's going so fast you can't really see, but I have little wet wipes that I clean my hands with so that I'm not, getting the colors all muddied up. And I decided that his beak was not making me happy, so I'm adding a little shadow with sort of a green gold color. It's a brown ochre color, and just putting a little bit more shadow in there, and I think that makes a big difference to me. You might not can see, but it does make a big difference in that beak. So now I'm just taking my cream pastel, and I'm just blocking in this background. And I'm taking some darker brown and putting it in some areas where I want it. And some reddish brown too. And a little bit more of that yellow ochre color. and it looks like a hot mess, but now I've turned it upside down so that I can blend it. And I'm just taking my finger and blending all around. I made a mistake. See where I went right between the bird's head and wing? That should be actually blue water, and I'm going to have to fix it on my finished piece. But I wanted to tell you about it so that you don't do it. If you attempt this, don't go all the way down. Remember, there's some blue water showing between that head and that wing. And I'm just adding some more layers of pastel, blending them out. I just want it to look really soft, really blurry. I don't want it to have any details in it whatsoever because I want all of the focus to be on the mallard. And just trying to be careful around those wings. Now, I know I'm going to have to come back and sharpen those wings up after this, and that's okay. I'm adding a little white into some areas where I want it to be lighter. But overall, I think he's looking pretty good. Now I'm cleaning up the edges of his neck there with a dark green and a little bit of the indigo. Just cleaning those up because, like I said, they got a little fuzzy during all of the background work. You can do the background as you do your subject if you'd like. I'm just doing mine last. But if it makes you more comfortable, do the background first and then work down to the subject, you know, in a diagonal fashion so your hand's not swiping through your work. Or you can do like I do, just turn it upside down so that you don't have to mess up your beautiful duck and work on it that way. Normally, like I said, I would have this sitting up on an easel to do. I usually do all of my pastels sitting on an easel, not flat like this. So this is a little bit awkward for me, but I'm getting there. I'm satisfied with it. I'm just going to continue working that background until I get it exactly like I want it, and I'm pretty close. It's looking pretty good. So once I get that done, then I'm going to work on the water part. Again, I'm not going for photorealism here. I'm just going for sort of a painterly approach to this. I mean, it is realistic, but it's still painterly as far as I'm concerned. Normally, I take a day to do a pastel like this. So I have sped up my method, and I also have sped up this video. But usually I take a lot more time. And that they usually come out looking even more realistic. But for demonstration purposes, I can't quite take 6 hours to do one painting. That would not be prudent. So now you see, just like I said a few minutes ago, that I am cleaning up those wings because I've smudged the edges a little bit. And just getting that dark color back in there so that it's not so pale. And just taking my kneaded eraser and cleaning up some areas. And I'm just taking a really pale blue, going into the background where the water is. And just sort of doing broken lines, just some broken marks. Again, I should have carried that water behind his neck. I'm going to fix it on my painting here. And I'm just letting you know to do that so that you don't think that, so you don't do the same way that I did it. Now I've added some darker blue, and then I'm coming back over that with the lighter blue again, going right up to the body. I'm letting a little bit of the gray of the paper shine through. This is a Color Fix sanded paper, so it's like painting on sandpaper, and it is a pale gray. Pastels, you should always do those on toned paper unless you have a reason to do it on white paper, because the toned paper just helps unify everything, because some of that color might shine through between the pastels, and it's just takes less pastel, it seems like, to get the job done than if you're trying to do white paper and cover up all the white. And I'm sharpening up the wings a little bit because I keep losing some of the areas. And I'm just blending out that water. sharpening up his little chest again and wherever I have lost the definition. I think overall it looks pretty good. And we're just going to put in some shadow work and of the water and some highlights, and we'll be pretty much done with this. I mean, you can take it further. You can put more details in if you'd like that I'm going to put in. Totally up to you. Like I said, I was trying to save time. Otherwise, this would be at least a 6-7 hour painting in the normal way that I work. But ain't nobody got 6 or 7 hours to watch a demonstration, so I cut it down to like an hour and something. Now I'm adding a little bit of cream and a little bit of brown into the water because the duck is reflecting in the water. And then I'm adding some of that darker blue in there as well. And I'm just trying to make it look like the water has some ripples going on in it. And right next to the duck, I'm using my pencil and I'm going in with a really dark brown. And I'm just trying to make it look like there's the reflection of the duck in the water. And then we're going to blend it out. And that is starting to look really nice. I'm liking it. I think it looks pretty good. And I'm going to add some highlights with the lighter blue. And Dorian is liking it. He said he's putting his 2 cents in. You can hear my little dove cooing at me. Every time I talk, he thinks I'm talking to him and he just starts cooing. He is a very friendly little dove. And he is cheering me on in the background. So here we go with some really darker darks, the darkest blue that I have on this particular palette, and just blending that in. So I have a variety of value there. I have light, medium, dark, and darker. And I'm just going to put some white in there to make it look like little drops or little splashes. You don't have to do that, but I just decided to do it. And I'm just adding a little white to the background because I want the water in the distance to look a little paler so that it sort of separates itself from this foreground. I want it to look paler, and I don't want you to be able to see the ripples in the water in the background. I want it to be less detailed because it's further away. And I'm just cleaning up some edges that I got all messy here. Oh, messy Mabel. That's what I am, just old messy Mabel. And so I'm just straightening up, fixing up some of the edges that got a little dirty or a little smudged, and getting those cleaned back up. And just doing a little, taking my pinky and just patting out some of those. I'm going to take my white, add a few more sort of like water drips coming off of the duck. I'm not getting real detailed with it. Adding some more darker brown so that, you can see that his dark brown is reflected in that water. Cleaning up these wing tips back here so that they are nice and crisp. And there we go. There you have your mallard duck. So I hope you enjoyed this.